This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. Glad to have you with us. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled this week unanimously in the state of Arkansas's favor on a landmark lawsuit involving pharmacy benefit managers, known as PBMs. In short, the ruling allows states to regulate PBMs. I caught up with Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge to discuss this and other legal moves.
We learned today that we won our Rutledge v. PCMA case that we had argued back in October. We won by a 8-0 unanimous decision from the Supreme Court, which is, unheard of almost. It seems like nothing is unanimous these days. And so we were quite pleased. This is a big win for local pharmacies, but it's also a big win for all Arkansans, all Americans, with regard to affordable, accessible healthcare, Roby.
One of the things that the PBM industry, though, has talked about is the fact that while this is certainly a victory for the pharmacies and for you advocating for them, that it is going to increase the cost of drugs. Is it kind of more important to you that there's that wider access to drugs versus the cost of what those drugs are?
Well, that's what the PBMs are saying, but it's not. It shouldn't increase the cost of drugs at all. Matter of fact, it should decrease, because now we're going to get to pull behind the curtain and see what PBMs are making. They are the ones making the profits. Our local pharmacies have been hurting and have had to dip into their own savings, or even sadly close their doors because they could not afford the reimbursement rates that the PBMs were giving them. Likewise, Arkansans and Americans should have better, more access to affordable health care, because now PBMs can't just shove us all into one category and say, well, you're going to have to pay X amount for a specific drug. Now we can hopefully have more transparency in the process and not have a PBM deciding for you, Roby, what healthcare provider you need to use, but rather you, Roby Brock, decide for yourself.
Do you anticipate that there will be some potential legislation in the upcoming legislative session that will be necessary to, I guess, take this a little bit further than what just the lawsuit settled?
Well, there might be, and I think there's room for us to potentially add more regulations. I'm not a big fan of regulations normally, but this was a very large industry that was completely unregulated. And this lawsuit resulted out of a 2015 law that we passed that said we're going to regulate pharmacy benefit managers in the state of Arkansas. And so it very well may be that we look in the 2021 session what we need to do to, again, ensure that Arkansans have affordable, accessible health care, and that our local pharmacies, our front line of healthcare, are not being pushed out of business by these big juggernauts.
All right, you've also joined a multi-state lawsuit against Facebook, declaring that it's a monopoly, should be broken up. Isn't that kind of anti-free market? Shouldn't Facebook be free to not be regulated? We've been through this before in the telecom industry. A century ago, we went through this in the oil and gas industry. How is this going to be different?
Well, and we've also just gone through a very similar type lawsuit with regard to Google. And Facebook is essentially, the reason why we brought this lawsuit is because of the antitrust violations of Facebook. Essentially, they're buying out all the competition. They're stealing data, or not stealing, let me rephrase that. They're not stealing data, rather they are using data. So that way they're putting in front of their users what the users only want to see. And so you're not necessarily getting promoted the best products or the best services. Even Facebook itself, you're getting only what Facebook wants you to have. Very akin to the Google lawsuit, because again, we want Arkansans and Americans to have the best products and the best services, and we want businesses to be successful. But that doesn't mean that you have to buy out, quash out, get rid of any other competition in order to do so.
Another lawsuit that I believe I know you're joining an amicus brief in this case. You might be trying to become an intervener in the case. It's been controversial. And this is the Texas lawsuit brought by Attorney General Ken Paxton of Texas against Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I guess for taxpayers, how much time, money, energy is going to be put into this from your Arkansas office, and what's the legal proof for doing this?
Well, I think it's important that we protect the integrity of our elections, and the state of Texas filed the initial lawsuit against those 4 defendant states. The state of Missouri worked on the amicus brief, and while I have spent a great deal of time, and a number of the attorneys have, in terms of making sure that we're making the right decision for Arkansas, the right decision legally, because elections are guided by Article 2 of the Constitution. And what happened, these 4 states essentially changed the rules of the game in the middle of the game. And that's why we want to make sure that the votes of Arkansans are not being diluted because of what took place in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan. We want to make sure that Arkansans' 6 electoral votes is not diluted, again, because of the practices of these other states.
So I'll point out the obvious on this, that the 4 states that are mentioned in this Texas lawsuit are states that Joe Biden won over President Donald Trump, who you supported. There were other states that went into the Trump column that also made changes in the pandemic era, Texas being one of them, Arkansas being one of them, North Carolina, Ohio. Why are you not involved in a lawsuit to try to force those states to hold to the same standard as the 4 states that went to President-elect Biden?
Well, that's a question you'd have to ask Ken Paxton of Texas, Roby, because he's the one that filed this lawsuit, and we joined the amicus brief that Missouri wrote in support of Texas and the suits that they're bringing. Essentially, what happened in these 4 states and why we have concerns is because, again, they changed the rules of the game. In Pennsylvania, you had the courts, the judiciary rather saying, yes, you can have these absentee ballots after the fact. In Georgia, they had the consent decree with regard to signature verification. All of these issues matter with regard to election integrity. And I just want Arkansans to know that we're doing everything that we can at the Attorney General's office to protect the integrity of our elections, to ensure that Arkansans' votes are not being diluted by other states in the Electoral College.
But philosophically, if election integrity is your reason for joining that lawsuit, you could file a lawsuit against Ohio and Texas and North Carolina if you wanted to, and ask them to protect their election integrity as well. But you're not doing that. As a matter of fact, you've been fundraising off of joining the Texas lawsuit there, or the brief for Missouri there. You tweeted yesterday, Arkansas is in the fight. Now will you help me win? Donate here. I mean, that kind of causes some people to say this is a political publicity stunt.
No, it's absolutely not. I am a candidate for governor in 2022, and I do encourage Arkansans to look at my record. This lawsuit, this issue is just one of the many things that I have done on my record that I'm proud of. Medicaid fraud, we've had more convictions in the first 4 years as in my administration than the 16 years prior to that. We've had more arrests and convictions on crimes against children. When we look at all the things that we have done at the office, we're the most pro-life state in the United States now. All of these great things are part of my record. And so as a candidate for office, you betcha I'm going to use my record to run on. If people don't have a record to run on, we're simply going to have to hear their words. And I'm a woman of action. I'm not a person of simply giving out rhetoric, Roby.
So why not take action and file a lawsuit in the states that Donald Trump won that also have election integrity issues according to your definition? Why not do that?
Well, I think philosophically, those states are not necessarily diluting the vote of Arkansans. Arkansans voted overwhelmingly for Donald J. Trump. And so if another state voted overwhelmingly for Donald J. Trump, how would that possibly dilute our vote here in Arkansas? I hate to point out the obvious question right back to you, Roby, but again, but I think it's important for you to understand that this is a lawsuit filed by Texas. Arkansas may be taking other legal action. We are weighing all of our options here to, again, protect and not dilute the vote of Arkansans.
All right, I'm going to make a wager with you, all right?
I'm not necessarily a betting woman, but we'll see.
All right, so when this case gets slapped down by the U.S. Supreme Court,
now you know what the Supreme Court's going to do. Okay.
I don't know.
Gosh, I should consult you more often, Roby.
I'm giving you an either or here. So if you in this, if this case from Texas wins that you've joined, you can have half of my TV show for 1 week to talk about whatever you want to. If the case gets slapped down, you have to wear a mask in every photo you post on social media until you get a vaccine. How about that? That's a fair offer.
Now, Roby, unfortunately, people don't see me as I go about my daily business, as I go into stores, as I'm interacting with folks. I do occasionally take the mask off to post pictures, because people asked for me to take the mask off for when we're taking pictures. And so I find it rather insulting that people don't spend more time with me and they think that I would put myself, my family, and others at risk simply because I take a mask off for a brief photograph. This pandemic is very serious, and we've lost a lot of Arkansans. We've lost a lot of family and friends. So I'm taking it very seriously. I've worked very closely with our governor to take this matter seriously. And so I'll be happy to take over your show as a guest at any time when you feel like you don't have enough content.
All right. Leslie Rutledge, Arkansas Attorney General, we thank you for your time. Be safe traveling back.
Well, thank you, Roby. Have a great day.
That's Attorney General Leslie Rutledge. Of course, the Supreme Court struck down the Texas case on Friday night after Rutledge and I taped our interview.